Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ewa Krukowska. I'm a senior climate and energy reporter at Bloomberg News in Brussels. Welcome very much to this event where we talk about clean energy transition. We all know that a just clean energy transition is only effective if possible, if everyone is involved across high-income, middle-income and low-income countries. To make it happen, the EU collaborates very closely with partners worldwide, offering financial, technical, and political support to facilitate the adoption of clean energy measures and technologies and establish effective supply chains for the clean technologies that are so needed to make the world net zero. We are meeting here on the sidelines of COP28 at the moment when countries worldwide are trying to find the best ways to accelerate the green transition and make sure that we reach the Paris Agreement objectives. It is an excellent opportunity as well to share knowledge and experience and explore new avenues where we can accelerate the clean green transition. I have the honor to welcome Energy Commissioner Kadri Simpson. Commissioner, the floor is yours.
And welcome to the second day of our EU Energy Days to discuss how the EU and global partners can unleash together the clean energy transition. Climate change is one of the greatest threats to humanity's future, and all around the world, heat waves, floods, hurricanes, and other extreme weather events are occurring on a scale never seen before. The magnitude of this challenge demands a collective response, and only together we can slash our emissions across the board. And only together we can accelerate the global clean energy transition, and only through win-win global partnerships can make real a difference where it is most needed. And there are plenty of reasons to be hopeful. The price of renewable energy is lower than ever before. And global investments in clean energy are on course to rise to 1.5 trillion euros in 2023, with solar power set to eclipse oil production for the first time ever. So we need to keep up this momentum and ensure everyone benefits. Let me briefly set out how I see the way forward for our partnerships. First, the new global pledge on tripling renewables and doubling energy efficiency measures is a big win. I heard that today we already do have 123 countries who are endorsing the objectives to triple the world's renewable energy capacity to at least 11 terawatts by 2030. And now that the goal is set, it's time to work on implementation, and I can assure you that the EU will play its part. The Commission has put together a package to help to implement the pledge, and we are already supporting and will continue to support our partners in middle and low-income countries in their clean energy transition. And together with member states, the EU is the world's top provider of climate finance. Last year alone, we mobilized 28.5 billion euros in public funding and 11.9 billion in private finance through guarantees. Second, we should make climate and energy a priority in any international partnership. The EU is already doing this through our Global Gateway strategy, which is a 300 billion euros investment strategy rooted in partnership and sustainability. And it brings together the EU, our member states, and their financial and development institutions to mobilize the private sector and boost major investments in partner countries. And just 2 weeks ago, I was in Maputo for the launch of the Mozambique EU Global Gateway Investment Forum, and I saw with my own eyes how we are identifying opportunities for investments and ambitious projects on green energy. And we are working with the private sector to develop Mozambique's grid, electrify cities and rural areas, and improve energy access. And this is just a snapshot and one example of something I experienced recently. But it gives you a sense of the incredible potential of partnerships to accelerate the clean and green energy transition. Dear colleagues, I would like to conclude with one other reason to strengthen our energy and climate partnerships. As you know, the past 2 years have redefined the EU's energy system in a way that we could not have imagined just a few years ago. But Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the energy crisis required us to become even more ambitious by diversifying and broadening our international energy partnerships and by doubling down on our clean energy transition. We managed to preserve Europe's energy security by saving energy, cutting our reliance on Russian gas, and going all in on the clean energy transition. Europe comes to COP with this experience behind us, and this is something that we can share. We know firsthand that a clean energy transition can be pursued even through challenging times, and we are willing and ready to forge new partnerships to unleash the clean energy transition and build a brighter, better future for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Simpson. We'll now discuss how we can take the international partnerships to a new level, how we can create a win-win cooperation between countries. I have the pleasure of welcoming to our first panel Ebba Busch, Deputy Prime Minister of Sweden and Minister for Energy, Business and Innovation. Joining us online is Jarosław Demchenkov, Ukraine's Deputy Minister of Energy. And in the room with us, we have Walter Very, Uruguay's Deputy Minister of Industry, Energy and Mining. Minister Busch, the first question goes to you. Could you tell us a bit more about Swedish endeavor to decarbonize, also in the context of the European Green Deal, a very ambitious strategy to reach net zero by 2050?
Yes, my pleasure, and an honor being part of this panel, and so happy to hear your introductory remarks also, dear Kadri. So Sweden has set out a quite ambitious plan to reach net zero by 2045, which is 5 years ahead of many other countries. And we have, we're a small country in the very northern part of Europe, but we're a country of hardworking, very curious people, and we have a lot of industries and companies to be very proud of. Some of them are in sectors that are usually quite hard to obey, sectors where with high emissions, for example, in steel making. Steel in Sweden stands for 10% of our total emissions, 10%. But we are now seeing projects that are successful, that are now managing in making green steel, taking all of the emissions out of premium steel quality. We are now seeing Volvo trucks rolling and are working within the building sector that are made from green steel. This is not a fantasy, it's consumer driven, it's a reality, and it can become also very competitive in pricing further down the road. But now it's competing by being fossil free. But if this type of project, succeeds, well, then that will cut Swedish emissions by 1/10 overnight. So it's an ambitious path to reach net zero by 2045. But we have loads of examples like this that are making it possible to not only speed up the process of reaching those high-set climate targets, but that is also showing that it is possible. Because that's the message that we are pushing during COP. It's urgent, but it also is possible. And I think a lot of the climate debate this far has been driven by shaming polluters. And I think we need to speak frankly about the damage that pollution is making. But I think that you can see an even greater shift if you push more for the possibilities. So less climate anxiety, more climate hope, showing that it is possible to combine high-set climate targets with economic growth and a strong welfare. You don't have to say to other countries, oh no, you can't do the same journey of economic growth as we have done, because we overpushed our balance on pollution, and now you have to take a step back. We can all see economic growth, but in a more sustainable way. And that's the example that we are trying to push. But lastly, I would like to say that this is all built on a policy of electrification of our transport sector and of our industry. So we have now set out on a journey to double our energy sector in the next 2 decades. That's a very tough challenge that we have set out. But electrification with both new renewables and nuclear fossil-free energy production is the policy that we are pushing in the years to come. And I think I'll stop there and come back later.
I have one quick follow-up question. You mentioned the positive example, the incentives that you can show to other countries in order to encourage them to follow the same path. Are there any examples of how you could use that from your experience in international cooperation?
Well, of course, then I have to talk about the European Union. I mean, EU really is one flagship example of not only promoting peace and well-being of its citizens, but also improving the quality of environment and promoting reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy system. And this spring, I had the honor of chairing 2 of the council circuits within the European Union when Sweden has had the presidency within the European Union. And there we managed, together with a lot of heavy work also from the Commission, to push forward the last parts of the Fit for 55 package. It's the biggest legislative package ever in the European Union history. And it sets out a very ambitious targets for fighting climate change and making it possible to do the green transition in a double sense. Green as in green transition, but green also as in making money. It will be possible for companies to make money off of the green transition, and I think that's an important factor in this. We now have a clear target for 2030, a clear climate target, and also setting the EU on the course of net zero emissions by 2050. And that's, for Sweden, that's the strongest international collaboration that we have. And it's one of great power, I think, if we can see succeed with what we've set out with the Fit for 55 package.
Thank you. Minister Demchenko, can you hear us well?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. My question to you is about the future of Ukraine, energy-wise and also EU-wise. You see your future in the European Union, which also comes with some obligations and pledges related to energy and climate. How is Ukraine going through its energy transition, and what are the biggest challenges that you need to tackle?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this question. I'm going to respond to it in a moment, but first I must address certain factors that have a direct impact on the current state of things. There are 2 main challenges for sustainable world: climate change and Russia-led global terrorism. Global warming is killing us slowly. Russians are doing this brutally with bombs, fossil fuels, and famine in vulnerable regions. Moreover, the biggest European nuclear power plant, Zaporizhzhia, has seized by Russians at the start of the invasion. Since then, the plant has faced blackouts 8 times. Every day, the world is living on the edge of a nuclear disaster, surprising Fukushima. If this happens, it will undermine investments in clean nuclear energy, making it harder to achieve net zero targets. This risk raises the need for international collaboration to a new level. Otherwise, civilized humanity will not be able to navigate the challenges of the near future. Today, the energy transition is a critical part of the overall security. And probably Ukraine is the only world country that deals with energy transition aimed at full-scale invasion. We draft a part of necessary legislation in both shelters and develop regional partnership in energy. We are deeply grateful to our partners for their support. Special thanks to Commissioner Kadri Simpson for initiating the Energy Support Fund last year. It helped us withstand the previous winter and prepare for the current. A heartfelt thankful to Vice Prime Minister Eva Busch and Sweden for their invaluable financial and technical aid. We extend our appreciation to Denmark, Norway, Germany, Japan, the UK, and the US. This is a long list of countries and people of goodwill standing with Ukraine. And of course, a special acknowledgement goes to the hosts. 2,500 generators from the United Arab Emirates kept Ukrainian hospitals and schools running last winter despite massive Russian missile attack. Ukraine now is fully synchronized with the European electric energy system, and so Ukraine and Moldova are moving together towards EU membership, and Ukraine supports Moldova to liberate itself from Russian energy grid. With Poland and Romania, we are discussing building new interconnectors. The hydrogen corridor to unite Ukraine, Slovakia, Czechia, Austria, and Germany was recently included in the list of the EU's project of common and mutual interest. We reached a significant breakthrough in nuclear energy. Ukrainians, along with Americans at Sweden plant, recently produced nuclear fuel for Soviet-designed nuclear units. It demonstrates the power of cooperation and means the end of Russian monopoly in this area too. Ukraine became a part of the EU's gas procurement platform, Aggregate EU. Ukrainian gas storages hold some of European gas reserves. Ukraine intends to contribute to the energy transition, playing the role of the green energy hub. We have the necessary potential in renewables, hydrogen, biogases, and nuclear generation. In November, we held an expo in Warsaw, in Poland, and more than 500 companies came there to explore the opportunities we offer. The interest in Ukraine is high because we would like to be a part of Ukraine, a part of Europe. We need to turn this interest into projects. We conducted essential reforms in the energy sector to make the market more transparent and self-regulated. More reforms to come. We don't wait until the war is over to start necessary changes. And we encourage investors not to wait either. This year, a Ukrainian company launched the first stage of a new powerful wind farm in the south, just 100 kilometers away from the front line. And just yesterday, in Dubai, this company signed another contract with the Danish partners to build a new wind farm. We believe in victory. They believe in victory, and ask you to believe. Firmly, decisively join our efforts to restore peace and save the planet. There is still so much more work to do, and continued progress will not be possible without international collaboration, and Ukraine will commit to the European energy security, and Europe will be a part of the EU family as a member of European Union, and we do everything possible to have this in our agenda and achieve this goal. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. One additional question, if I may. Clean energy transition is difficult. As you said, Ukraine is in a very much different situation, very much more difficult because of the war. What can be done? What can we all do together on the international level to help Ukraine tackle the situation, accelerate the transition, and make sure that it happens?
You know, this winter will not be easy. Unfortunately, Russia is still use energy as a weapon, and energy, without doubt, another front line in this war. But we really see, and I gave you example, that doing business even in what period of time possible. We have a lot of examples. And support to Ukraine, it means international support and cooperation with Ukraine. Not just only financial and kind support, but to take part in feasibility study, to think about future, to think about new sustainable recovery of Ukraine. We even during what period of time updated our energy strategy, and we would like increase access to affordable, clean, sustainable, and reliable energy in Ukraine. This is our goal: decentralized energy system, and we willing to have in this our international partners. We have to increase capacity of our region to be more energy resilient. And here a lot of exercises and a lot of business which we would like to have together with international partners. Think about localization of your business, manufacturing of equipment for energy transition in Ukraine, because we have these options for the European and the US countries and Arabic countries to be here in Ukraine and engage into the Ukraine green recovery. After our victory, we speed up green transition, and we will need this available support of this project in Ukraine. That's why we open, and really, it is. Thank you so much, Commissioner Kadri Simpson, for your personal support that you provide as a commissioner to Ukraine during policy-making process. Really, we conducted great changes in our legislation, and now we are very close to fully integrate our electricity market with the European one, and this is also very important, especially in this tough period of time for our country. Over to you.
Thank you. Minister Veri, if I may now ask you, if you could tell us a little bit about the Uruguay's transition to clean energy, the first one.
Bueno, muy buenos días para todos. Es un gusto para mí participar de este evento con este destacado panel. En especial saludar al ministro de Ucrania y transmitirle la solidaridad de mi gobierno y del mío propio con el pueblo ucraniano. Uruguay es un pequeño país en el fin del continente americano, en el sur del continente americano, que nos denominamos un país verde. Somos un país de renta media que hace 25 años decidimos comenzar una primera transición energética dándole lo primero que necesitábamos, que era un marco regulatorio, un marco legal y regulatorio. En Uruguay la ley rige en todo su potencial, los contratos se cumplen, los inversores pueden ir seguros y por eso van, y por eso atrae inversiones Uruguay. Y la primera transición se desarrolló mucha con capitales europeos, con empresas europeas que fueron a invertir. Esa decisión nos llevó a que hoy, podemos decir con orgullo, la hemos cumplido a la primera etapa y hoy Uruguay, el 100% prácticamente de la energía eléctrica que consume proviene de fuentes naturales, de fuentes renovables. Básicamente, lo que ya teníamos desde muchos años atrás, de más de casi 200 años, un poco menos, que era la energía hidráulica, la energía del producto del agua, de las fuentes de agua de los ríos de nuestro país, y se le incorporó rápidamente a partir del año 2010 la energía eólica. Tenemos un potencial eólico importante instalado, biomasa, con el cual no solamente estamos generando energía, sino que estamos resolviendo pasivos ambientales generados por otras industrias, como por ejemplo el arroz. Uruguay es un productor de alimentos para el mundo, producimos de las mejores carnes, pero también de los mejores granos, entre ellos el arroz, y con la cáscara de arroz existen centrales de biomasa que queman ese combustible y además de generar energía limpia, renovable, nos están entregando, estamos resolviendo un pasivo ambiental. Así lo mismo ocurre con la industria forestal, con los procesos de la industria forestal, que también aprovechamos los residuos de esa industria para poder generar energía. Y por último, estamos comenzando a instalar, ya tenemos una instalación importante, pero el futuro, lo que demande de potencia el crecimiento del país, estamos instalándola en energía solar. Con esas fuentes de energía, Uruguay ya no depende de los fósiles, solamente es un 3% en algunos momentos de picos de consumo, de lo contrario somos un país que generamos la energía 100% renovable. Y al terminar nuestra primera transición hemos comenzado a avanzar hacia la segunda. Y la segunda básicamente está basada en tres pilares fundamentales. Uno es la eficiencia energética, que es un cambio de hábitos de nuestras costumbres para darnos cuenta que si queremos cuidar al planeta y cambiarlo realmente, no basta con que la energía sea renovable, sea verde, sino que tenemos que también cuidarla, porque si no también nos va a costar instalarla. El segundo pilar es el de la movilidad eléctrica. Al tener nuestras fuentes de energía eléctrica renovable, nuestra movilidad está definida que vamos a avanzar hacia lo eléctrico. Avanzamos lento, las tecnologías son caras, aún cuesta imponer los vehículos eléctricos, como le cuesta a la mayoría del mundo por lo menos, pero estamos avanzando rápidamente. Tenemos un país que está 100% electrificado, es decir, que la totalidad de las rutas del Uruguay usted va a encontrar un cargador donde poder completar la batería para llegar al destino final. Por lo tanto, allí tenemos un proceso andado. Y la tercera y más importante de todas las pilares de la segunda transición es el desarrollo de la economía de hidrógeno verde. Uruguay ha desarrollado una hoja de ruta de hidrógeno verde donde se ha determinado que somos potencialmente exportadores de hidrógeno, que nuestros precios son básicamente atractivos para la exportación de hidrógeno y por lo tanto estamos ya comenzando a desarrollar los primeros proyectos que son de capitales europeos, valga decirlo, que son para combustibles alternativos, básicamente metanol y combustibles verdes, gasolinas sintéticas. Hacia allí seguimos avanzando, no vamos a parar en nuestra meta hasta dejar de depender del petróleo. Para que ustedes tengan una idea, el mundo depende hoy del petróleo, todos lo sabemos, aproximadamente en un 80% de los combustibles fósiles. Uruguay tiene solamente una dependencia del 40%. Aún así, nos estamos proponiendo avanzar en esta segunda transición hacia el desarrollo de la movilidad eléctrica y del hidrógeno verde, que nos va a permitir descarbonizar la industria, que son los dos factores fundamentales de nuestro consumo de fósil, el transporte y la industria.
You said at the beginning of your speech that Uruguay is a small country, but it has a lot of big positive examples to show to other countries. Does the translation work? It's okay. I just wanted to ask you as a follow-up, how can we use international cooperation to accelerate further the transition? And do you think that something could be agreed at this scope that will let countries like yours further expedite the transition?
Bueno, por supuesto que sí. Creo que todo lo que podamos aportar hacia avanzar hacia ese camino de descarbonización son bienvenidos. Creo que la COP es un ámbito para ello. Estas discusiones, estos foros, este intercambio nos debe permitir de alguna manera llegar a acuerdos. En materia de cooperación internacional, Uruguay tiene una infinidad de acuerdos firmados con países puntualmente, básicamente de Europa, obviamente que de América. Pertenecemos a una región donde estamos interconectados, donde formamos un bloque económico, en nuestro caso, que es el Mercosur, con Argentina, Brasil y Paraguay. Tenemos una interconexión eléctrica con Argentina y con Brasil. Por lo tanto, tenemos acuerdo y trabajamos en conjunto permanentemente. Estamos hoy lanzando precisamente lo que se acordó en Montevideo en la Semana de la Energía de OLADE y Foro de Inversiones de IRENA hace un mes atrás, que es la certificación del hidrógeno que va a producir América Latina y el Caribe, donde vamos a tomar gran parte de la normativa europea, pero también vamos a incorporar algunas normativas propias, como por ejemplo el respeto a los pueblos originarios, que no es el caso de Uruguay, que no los tiene, pero sí de los demás países de América, y el uso adecuado del recurso agua, por ser América Latina una fuente importante, de las más importantes del planeta en materia de energía, de agua dulce. Tenemos acuerdos con el puerto de Rotterdam, con el puerto de Ámsterdam, de Hamburgo. Tenemos acuerdos con la Unión Europea, que recientemente nuestro presidente firmó en la última cumbre de Europa y la Unión Europea, América Latina y el Caribe. Por lo tanto, estamos en materia de internacional abiertos, necesitamos el apoyo y la colaboración internacional, sobre todo en materia de conocimientos, de tecnologías, de capacidades. Es decir, esta primera transición que yo les mencionaba hoy, básicamente estuvo basada en el conocimiento que tenían otros países en el desarrollo de esos energéticos y nosotros los hemos adquirido. Y los hemos adquirido tanto que hoy tenemos nuestras propias capacidades, hemos creado nuestros propios técnicos, nuestras propias empresas y hoy nuestras empresas se han internacionalizado. Hoy están instalando capacidades de renovables en muchos países del mundo, a pesar de ser un país pequeño, como lo decía hoy. Así que creo que tenemos todo por hacer en materia de cooperación internacional y somos parte de esos acuerdos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Simpson, when it comes to the clean energy transition, one important element that you already mentioned in your opening remarks is the supply chain for the technologies that are critical to the transition, which also means critical raw materials. Is there anything that could be done in order to ameliorate that at the international level?
Yes, and thank you for this question. Before I will reply, I want to say my warm greetings to Yaroslav, and I see that you are connected online without interpretation. So our previous panelist just expressed his solidarity and Uruguay's solidarity to Ukraine and Ukrainians, and I want to repeat that this strong solidarity is also provided by us. Eva, you asked about critical raw materials, and indeed, these are key for energy transition. And we will address these challenges with many of our initiatives, but we know that this is a global challenge. And as I know that we are almost in the end of our panel, I just want to reply not only to these dependencies that new transition will create. We will create new partnerships with our key partners, and to name just few of them, the last COP, our president was signing some of these MOUs. And I know that like-minded countries will join our club also during this COP. From the energy point of view, I think that it is also very important that we will provide our support to the countries who are facing difficulties and who, without our support, will not manage to transform their energy systems, at least at that scale that is necessary. So we have set up several just transition partnerships. with South Africa, with Indonesia, with Vietnam, to allow them to build up the path towards mining and coal economy, towards renewables. And then in my initial remarks, I mentioned the Global Gateway Initiative. And just to give you the scale, this Global Gateway Initiative brings together our member states and financial institutions. And this really makes a difference across the globe. Just two initiatives, flagships. One is Africa-EU Green Energy Initiative. And this aims to support the deployment of at least 50 gigawatts of renewable electricity in Africa, in countries where there are more than 600 people who still do not have access to electricity. So by 2030, we do believe that we will bring electricity to 100 million people. And another very big initiative is Water, Energy and Climate Team Europe initiative in Central Asia, where our financial institutions, EIB, EBRD, Commission, and 8 member states will totally invest more than 710 million to address, together with Central Asian partners, these challenges that otherwise do not allow them to transform their energy and water and climate challenges. So this is not just that we need critical raw materials. So we are really willing to support transition across the globe, and we invest a lot. The EU and our member states, we are the biggest global sponsors for climate transition. So I think that partnerships are built on that principle.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Simpson. And that is probably the best summary. As long as we work together, as long as we are open to cooperation, as long as we take into account the needs of all countries, we are on the way to success. Thank you so much for the esteemed panelists. Thank you. That concludes our first panel. We'll have a short break. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second panel at our session today. We will discuss additional avenues for cooperation and investment that can accelerate the green transition. And I have the privilege of welcome an esteemed panel. Joining me in the second session are Carla Montesi, Director responsible for the Green Deal and Digital Agenda at DG INTPA of the European Commission in Brussels, Tamara Kaleva, who is the head of Division Energy, Environment and Utilities at the Croatian Chamber of Economy, Cepidi Moremong, Chief Operating Officer of Africa 50, and we also have with us a representative of the European Investment Bank, Laura Piovesen, who is the head of Sustainability Department. Let me start with Carla. Could you tell us perhaps a bit more about what DG INTPA is doing and what sectors of the energy are best for energy cooperation in the clean transition?
Many thanks. I will follow our previous discussion with our commissioner, just saying that, of course, we are working in different areas of cooperation, and the global clean energy transition, of course, is at the heart of everything that we are doing. Yes. Okay. Let me start again. Many thanks, and let me deepen what our commissioner just said in the previous panel, because we are working, when we look to the energy sector, we are working in different areas of cooperation. And of course, the ambition of global clean energy transition is at the heart of our effort and is more critical than ever. So we have seen at the COP, we start with the pledge on renewable energy and energy efficiency. This is really the core of our cooperation. We are using a lot of funds. Our president just mentioned at the first meeting at the COP, in the next 2 years, we will engage more than 2.3 billion just to support the development of renewable energy and energy efficiency. Of course, this implies to intervene in the different sectors, in the solar, indoor power, geothermal, green hydrogen, solar plant, and the biogas. What I would like to add here is that, of course, the development of renewable energy is not enough if we are not covering also other two aspects. It's the electricity grid infrastructure and it's the regional electricity market. Because if we are starting to produce renewable energy, but we don't have the grids that allow us to distribute this production, of course, will not be enough. If we don't have the right governance, the market that will facilitate the distribution of this production, the production will not be used. This is the reason why in our areas of cooperation we are working also with our African partners, for example, to develop the African single electricity market or the continental master plan that is the first piece to achieve this electricity market. One other sector that to which we are not devolving a lot of attention is also the energy access and in particular the clean cooking. Today we still have 2.3 billion of family, of people that are still lack access to clean, modern cooking solution. And we know very well that the black carbon emission from inefficient cooking account for 2% of our greenhouse gas emission. We are not talking a lot here also at the COP about this clean cooking, but allow me to say that under this Team Europe, we are allocated more than 200 million just to contribute to the clean cooking activities. Last element in our area of cooperation is methane. We know that methane is the second largest contributor to the global warming
after the CO2 emission. And we know that when we look to waste, when we look to the agricultural sector, when we look to the energy, we know that nearly 40% of, we have 40% of methane emission. And this is the reason why Europe has really support and welcome the methane finance sprint that was raised at the COP26, and we are contributing to this pledge on methane.
And Carla, could you tell us more about what financial instruments could be used to help the transition?
Our commissioner just mentioned the Global Gateway. Global Gateway is our strategic investment offer to our partners to work with us on the green and the digital transition. We have foreseen to be able to mobilize around 300 billion in the next few years to support this green transition. What is there is a mix of our financial tools that include grants to support the technical assistance to support the governance, but include also some innovative financial tools as blended finance or guarantees that allow to de-risk, to create a leverage to support big infrastructure investment in the area of energy.
Continuing on the line of financial instruments, Laura, a question to you. Could you tell us a bit about how the European Investment Bank is supporting the clean transition? What is it doing in the EU, and how does it differ or maybe similar in countries outside the Union?
Thank you, Eva. And indeed, as first point, I would like to point out that the European Investment Bank is the only IFI, the only MDB who has clearly phased out support to unabated fossil fuel. So while phasing this out, we do focus on renewable energy, we focus on energy efficiency, we focus on grids, and we focus on the necessary innovation to support all these ecosystems. And by doing so, we have increased our lending to energy from 14 billion euros to 19 billion euros in 2022. Of course, our focus is within EU. We are the European Investment Bank. A large share of what we do in terms of volume in financing is inside EU. Outside EU, of course, the scenario is different. The EIB is very active. We have created a new branch called EIB Global, really to put more boots on the ground, to be more present outside Europe. But also, of course, it's important to leverage on partnership and do that to increase the advisory support, because there are not so much lack of financing per se. There is indeed a lack of bankable projects. So we need to help the countries develop a pipeline of bankable projects, so supporting them to work on where we see barriers on the regulation, be it the regulatory framework or the regulation per se. So supporting countries in designing and putting in place a regulatory framework that is supportive to the clean energy transition when it comes to power purchase agreements, for example, contracts for difference, setting in place this more predictable environment which allows investments to flow. The second area of advisory where we work is also to help prepare the projects themselves so that indeed they can attract both public but most importantly private investments. I think yesterday it was Finance Day and a lot has been discussed around the public role is very important, but we cannot enable the green and transition if there is no private sector investment mobilized. And for us at the European Investment Bank, mobilization of private sector investment is part of our DNA. We do have in our statute the requirement that for €1 that we invest, we mobilize at least €1.
How difficult is it to mobilize private finance in the current financial and economic environment?
Well, as I mentioned, it is crucial to the private finance needs a predictable environment. So this preparation work at the country level, on the pipeline side, to set up this environment. This is what's crucial, and this is what can trigger, indeed, private sector mobilization to flow. Beyond that, of course, the partnership also, in particularly with the European Commission, and Carla mentioned the Global Gateway Initiative. This is a way to help sharing the risk with the private sector and support, indeed, be a catalyst for the private sector's investments.
Thank you. Japidi, I have a question for you about Africa. What energy sectors hold the biggest potential for the international cooperation in clean transition?
Thanks for that. I think if you look at energy, I mean, the earlier panel, the commissioner was talking about within the EU focusing on energy security. On the continent, we're talking about energy scarcity, right? So we've got, as Carla said earlier, we've got 600 million people on the continent without power. So for us, the opportunity set is really around, one, power generation. Africa currently only has 1% of installed renewable energy capacity. And you're talking about a continent that is 20% of the global population, right? So right there, there's significant opportunity. We've done a little bit, and I think over the years, the investment that has come through into energy has been significant. We need to do more, right? There's obviously the area around transmission lines. So we're bringing in additional renewable energy capacity. What this requires is, one, stable grids and transmission lines that can evacuate. We've traditionally seen African governments using their balance sheets to finance this, and we're saying to African governments, you can do this through PPP frameworks. So as Africa 50, we're an infrastructure developer. So very much to what Lara was talking to earlier around projects need to be developed and prepared. That's what we do. We work with African governments who are shareholders to prepare and develop those projects and get them to bankability. So those are the two areas. And the third part that we don't talk enough about is renewable energy is intermittent, right? Solar is intermittent, so there's a need then for battery storage and to ensure that battery storage is actually affordable. So to me, that's really the three key areas that I see, which is, if you're looking at the renewable energy space, it's sort of that value chain of generation, transmission, and distribution, and the battery storage to ensure that our systems are stable and we can provide stable power.
How do you see things developing at this scope? Is there any chance that it will help to further accelerate the transition in Africa, or is not enough being done and we have to focus on certain areas?
There's always more to be done, right? But I think there are two key things, and Carla mentioned them earlier, that I'd really like to emphasize. It's around the type of capital, right? And Lara said there's a lot of capital, but I always say, is it the right type of capital? The stuff that we're doing with project preparation and project development requires risk capital, right? There's not enough risk capital in this market. Africa 50, we've got a very small balance sheet, right? We've got about $100 million dedicated to project development. This is the heavy lifting, where you're putting together the feasibility studies, you're financing the ESIAs, you're financing the models and working with governments who in many cases don't have the capacity. So that's what we require. We need blended finance, right? We are talking about how is it, because the public sector can't do it alone. So how is it that we catalyze public sector financing? And that's going to have to be through blended finance structures. There needs to be that first loss portion that is able to de-risk the project such that we can bring in the public sector, the private sector.
What kind of financial instruments are you looking at? Are you talking to multilateral development banks? Are you talking to private investors? Is there something that you see as the best solution to use?
I think one has to look at multiple solutions, right? There's no one size fits all. So as Africa 50, as I said, our shareholders are African governments. they've given us capital, which is catalytic capital, to be able then to bring in the private sector. So what have we been able to do with this? We've set up a private equity fund, an infrastructure later stage private equity fund, where we've been able to mobilize 17 African institutional investors. This is a first, right? Because the key thing for us is let's look locally and see how it is that we can mobilize domestic capital. Then we want partners from the EU. I mean, I'm really excited about the EU-Africa Gateway. How is it that we tap that for that risk capital? How is it that we tap that for grant funding? How is it that we work with institutions such as EIB in executing on significant projects on the continent, right? We're developing Nashigal, is a 420 megawatt hydropower plant in Cameroon that's got several EU multilateral development banks in there. We funded a 400 megawatt solar PV plant in Egypt, part of Benban. That has got several EU partners in that. So it's really around tapping the blended finance, the risk capital, concessional funding from a debt perspective in order that we really meet and try and bridge that energy scarcity on our continent.
Thank you so much. Tamara, you represent the Croatian Chamber of Economy. Could you tell us more about what your organization is doing and how it views the energy transition?
Yes, thank you, Eva. First of all, I would like to say how happy I am to be with you here today and to share the experience and best practices from Croatia. Well, I come from Croatian Chamber of Economy, and we are the largest enterprise network in Croatia that contains about 150 enterprises. And in my sector, we deal with industry and sustainable development. What we are doing, we are actually supporting the companies in their clean energy transition, obviously. And regarding the cooperation, I must say that I would give some examples. I was listening what my colleagues are saying, which is quite interesting. We in Croatia, last year we reached 31% of renewables in total consumption, energy consumption, but we still have a long way to go because we are very rich in potentials in renewables. So we also have faced difficulties as slow permitting procedures, problems with grid connections, as any other, as we heard these days, any other EU country. So we work very much on that to help the companies to develop their projects, to bring them to bank financing, and obviously then later to operate. As I would just give the examples of the international cooperation that I think that would be interesting. Although today we've been talking a lot about renewables, which are obviously the easiest and the best way for clean energy transition, I would also like to mention the green hydrogen, because I think that the place where we have innovations, this also give a lot of room for international cooperations, yes. We have one project that I can mention where is a regional cooperation kind. It's called the North Adriatic Hydrogen Valley, where 3 countries, actually Slovenia, Croatia, and North Italy region, actually connect and develop the whole ecosystem, the whole value chain of hydrogen. So it's not just about producing 5,000 tons of green hydrogen annually, it's about creating the value system and decarbonizing industry and transportation system in Croatia. So I think it's a valuable regional example of international cooperation. Also, we have some global announcements to make, something which was nearly introduced, actually introduced 2 weeks ago, that we also are planning to let's say, develop sort of energy hub on the island of Krk in north part of Croatia, and to import the hydrogen from Brazil. So we are talking about 10 gigawatts of ammonia and green hydrogen that should be shipped to Croatia and transferred to this part of Europe. So this is only an announcement, but we are also looking forward to such a huge international cooperation.
Excellent. Talking about projects, Laura, the European Investment Bank, in its mandate, has a provision that prohibits it to finance fossil fuels. What are the projects that you would highlight that the EIB invested in, helped in third countries?
So, well, let me zoom in a number of areas. So first of all, the just transition that we discussed earlier on. And I spoke about also working collaboratively with other multilateral development bank in implementing these just transition programs. We are launching here at COP28 a new country-led platform approach for more different multilateral development banks to work together. But in fact, even before that, we started working together on just energy transition partnership. And a recent example, again, here of these days at COP, is the agreement with North Macedonia to support them on their just energy transition. And this means supporting the reskilling of the population, supporting the transition away from coal, and supporting the development of the economy towards greener energy, but also towards more broader economic activities. So this is a clear area where joining power between EIB and EBRD really helps catalyzes this broader ecosystem approach. Tamara mentioned green hydrogen, and this is clearly an area where we need to work again with our African partners, for example, in developing the ecosystem in a way that is a win-win, a win for Europe, but particularly a win for the countries which can develop their own value chain. So we are working and doing that together with the Commission, with different countries, with Egypt, with Mauritania, to try to look at where there are opportunities to produce green hydrogen locally, but then also develop the full value chain locally, be it towards the fertilizer or the steel. So, for example, in Egypt, we are looking at developing a project which produces green hydrogen from solar and then uses it to produce the fertilizers.
Carla, is there anything that the Commission could actually do to improve the public-private partnerships? Because that has caused a lot of problems. We are not at the level yet where we should be.
Many thanks for the question, and I think we have a partly answer to this question, because today working with the private sector is an essential point. We know that the public funds will never be enough to fulfill the gap that we have to respect, to put in place our SDG on energy. So we absolutely need the private sector. And we know also that working with the private sector, with some financial instruments, when I talk to the private sector, I include the local and the international private sector. It's very important to underline that sometimes with a little push from blended finance or some guarantees that help to the risk, we can also have the private sector that will reach this part, these countries, or this geographic zone in the different countries where the risk is so high that private sector will not be necessarily involved. So absolutely, we, under the Global Gateway, we are working with private sector to involve them in our ambition. And for the big infrastructure project, yes, we try to build with our financial institutions, with our partner, in order to build in some key areas for the big infrastructure to build a public-private partnership. And we just mentioned hydrogen, for example. We are working now in different countries in Africa. We were talking about Africa, just to see how we pull together financial institution, private sector, and some financial instrument in the European side, blended and guarantees to support big infrastructure project on the hydrogen sector. Just to give an example.
Chapidi, if you were to give an example of a project where international cooperation was key and that really, really mattered in the green transition, what would it be? A positive example, what we talked in the previous panel, if you were to choose a project where international cooperation was prominent and that really mattered in the green transition for Africa, what would that be?
I'm going to take advantage here because I've got the mic and ask to provide two examples. So we're very excited as Africa 50 together with the African Union and the African Development Bank launched last year at COP what we call the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa. And this is really a partnership across multiple institutions. EIB has been central in working with us and coming up with project criteria. We've been working with institutions such as Rockefeller Foundation. We've been working with the likes of Proparco to really bring together and co-create an alliance across multiple partners to accelerate their transition to net zero for Africa, and looking specifically at project development and project preparation. So we're raising a $500 million fund that is with Africa 50 as a project, as a fund manager to say, this is where the market failure is. There are not enough bankable projects, so we need to really accelerate the execution of bankable projects on the continent. 2 days ago, very pleased to say, we've been able to get commitments of $175 million from the French government, from the German government, from Proparco, from several institutions, the Arab Bank for Economic Development, the West African Development Bank for Africa, really to say we're committed to try and see how we can accelerate this transition. So that's what we're looking for. This is a blended finance vehicle, and to me, the ability to be able to raise this blended finance vehicle will be a significant step forward in really looking to see what we can do. The other has been, it's a different partnership with the UAE at Africa Climate Summit, where the UAE committed $4.5 billion to clean energy in Africa. The difference is they brought different partners together. So they've got private sector partners, Amir Power, Mazda, the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, as well as Etihad Credit Insurance. So these are people who execute. These are project developers with Africa 50 as a strategic partner. And what we've been able to do in a short period of time is we signed recently MOUs with the government of Mozambique. We're signing MOUs with the government of Senegal specifically on green energy projects that we've identified that we would like to execute on. So it's really also about how do we scale the financing and how do we speed up the execution.
Tamara, and on the Croatian side, what can be done within the EU to make sure that the public-private partnership is more effective?
Well, let's put it this simple. I think that governments should do their job. They should be policymakers. They should bring policy which are clear, secure, stable, at least midterm. And this would actually, it is the best way to bring investments, yeah. And private investments should concentrate on running development and operation at the end. But obviously there are some cases when the investments are critical, when they are riskier, and then the governmental or public sector, let's put it this way, can interfere and help them to minimize this risk and to bring them. For examples, we have, I can just name one example, and this is in geothermal energy. Geothermal energy is actually considered as a risky investment, yeah. But Croatia has a huge potential in geothermal energy, and we actually used our experience in oil industry wisely And we recently, I mean, not really recently, but let's say 10 years ago, started using our geothermal potential also for clean energy transition. There is a governmental agency that actually used the funds available from the EU and minimizes the risk of such projects when it initially actually developed and brought certain projects, geothermal projects, up to the phase when they are attractive for developments. We in Chamber also facilitate and promote clean energy transition a lot, and we are also sort of facilitators between private and public sectors as well. So that's how I see it.
Laura, are there any bankable projects that the EIB has in the pipeline or has already implemented that you are particularly proud of?
Well, it's a difficult choice, but I must say, you know, something that we are currently working on, again, together with the Commission, and I think could be, to a certain extent, a game changer, is the Global Green Bond Initiative. Now, the bank, the EIB funds itself on the capital markets. We have become the climate bank in 2020, but before that, we were always, very much involved in green projects. And of course, when we issued our first green bond in 2007, since then we have grown to 50% of our issuance also almost in green. I mean, this has been a huge support in our transition. So it's very important, an initiative like the Global Green Bond Initiative, where we are working as a Team Europe ecosystem, and the bank is doing its bit to purchase green bonds from these emerging markets, so help them really develop this market, not only by purchasing the bond, but also helping setting up all the standards needed to make them credible. So I think, if you look forward, I would say this can be really something changing a bit the global landscape.
Pidi, in terms of the biggest stumbling blocks that should be tackled as soon as possible, what would you say it is?
I think in any environment, and it's not necessarily specific to Africa, any investors looking for long-term stability vis-a-vis the regulatory framework, right? So I think in certain of our markets, there's a lot that still needs to be done in ensuring the stability of a clear regulatory framework. I think the other part is around risk, right? The perception of risk on our continent, unfortunately, is out of proportion with the actual reality. So to me, it's really the narrative from an Africa-specific perspective, which says the risk in Africa seems to be a lot higher than other markets. But if you look at a Moody's study that was undertaken in 2020, the debt default rates for infrastructure are the second lowest globally. So I think that really, to me, is one of the biggest stumbling blocks in Africa, is that perception of risk and how it is we illustrate to prospective investors that, one, infrastructure on the continent is very bankable, it's profitable, and you can make money.
We are slowly running out of time, but before we finish, I have a question to each of you. You represent very different sectors, very different environments. If you had one piece of advice that you would give either to policymakers, to governments, to investors, to the general audience in an international environment, what would it be to accelerate the green transition?
Okay, I will start. Well, I think that globally we are united about climate goals, in general. But I think that somehow we should be also united about how to perform, how to implement those goals, because the policies are different in each part of the world, yes. We in Europe, we have very, let's say, strong policies, and it's a question if whether it's going to help or not our net zero industries, yes. I think that if we have, or at least try to have similar patterns, that would improve clean energy transition, but also net zero industries development. Otherwise, we will come to carbon leakage and other elements which are not really in favor to accomplishments of goals.
I'm going to borrow something that our CEO says all the time, which is there's an opportunity cost to slow decision making. So I think the key thing for us is around how is it that we speed up and scale up what it is that we're trying to do on the continent and be pragmatic about how it is we execute.
So given indeed the size of the challenge, the scale, but also the need to speed up, I think collaboration can really leverage a lot of power and hopefully green power.
If the message is for our leaders, I think clearly we say to continue to push this ambition of having a clean energy transition and act in such a way that the right governance, the right environment, the right regulatory system or ecosystem is in place at country level that will facilitate the implementation of the program and the intervention of the public and the private sector in the different countries.
Thank you so much. And before we finish, let me thank you, this all-female, fantastic energy panel. Thank you so much.